वंचित वर्गों का बच्चे को ले आओ, वो भी करना, ये भी करना।
Ma'am, working women's hostel, creches, women specific skilling programs, promotion of market access for self-help groups, these are some of the things you mentioned. And you said that women's-led development will see an allocation of more than 3 lakh crore rupees. Could you specify some of the, how this is going to be spent?
See, actually speaking, we have been consistently maintaining that the emphasis for bringing more women to productive activities will have to be continued. And that is why in economic survey yesterday, you saw the figures that from somewhere close to 2018, 16.7% to 37%, women's participation in workforce has been highlighted in the economic survey. So in the last 10 years, where we started with a simple Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao to bringing more women and incentivizing women in work and providing them, loans to uplift them. Even in this budget, we have given emphasis for land and property registration for women. So like that, at every stage when we center focus on women, it has brought in a bit of a mindset change, like the way in which in the rural areas, Drone Didi has actually not just made women to be able to operate drones, but the mindset in the village that our women can just not do our regular kitchen work, but here are they in the fields, which are essentially male dominated. Only for the haranguing, monotonous physical labor, de-weeding the field, do you find women coming. But here in the villages, women are operating drone. They are able to make assessment of the crop density. They are able to use it for spraying fertilizer, chemical and so on. And if this is how villages and their mindsets are changing towards women, it gives them a prominence. So in many of that is why, if you remember last time, we had come up with a special savings scheme, Mahila Samman Bachat Nidhi. What a response we had in it. Because people realize saving in the name of women actually helps. They've come out to invest. Women have themselves come out, and women themselves are saving in some other, their child or their mother's names. Right. So this government has not lost an opportunity in bringing to focus women and women's needs. Whether it is the simple sanitary pad, which Honorable PM spoke about, even from Red Fort, you can see the priority is given for women, and that's what has explained why 3 lakh crores for women and women-led. Today, Anganwadis are standing out for the kind of quality work that they're doing. They can be even better improved. You're going to have early childhood education centers in those Anganwadis, because
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's best 5G smartphone brand.
Former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram has reacted on the budget presentation by the Finance Minister today, and I quote, he said on a post in X, he said that I'm glad to know that the Honorable FM has read the Congress manifesto for the 2024 elections, and after the election results, this is the outcome, unquote. This is, of course, a post by P. Chidambaram on the budget presented today.
Get the magic of the best working for you now.
Link your payment cards once, collect rewards forever.
लोन मिलेगा या नहीं, ये आपके क्रेडिट स्कोर पे डिपेंड करता है। आज ही जाइए पैसाबाजार.com पर और अपना क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक कीजिए फ्री में, क्योंकि लोन की जरूरत किसी को भी कभी भी पड़ सकती है।
चल एक्टिंग थोड़ा भेल बनो।
ये आया बात बोल। पैसाबाजार.com।
The biggest democratic exercise in the world. Team NDTV covers it from ground zero.
BJP really had to fight a tough election this time.
Unprecedented exercise. Unmatched coverage.
There is no dispute. जनता को decide करना है.
From polling to counting, NDTV brought you the most trustworthy news and updates. Elections mean NDTV.
NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the topmost news platform in the country. Number one in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust. Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
After a great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
वो performance सही सारे नहीं थे बढ़िया results मिले.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Some people say the metaverse will only be virtual. One day this lecture hall will be made of code, and driverless cars would be trapped in intersections. But even in this maze of the future, you can't wish away health. It's time to become more resilient. 10 years of Banega Swasth India, we have grown and achieved so many milestones. And now I have a plan to beat the urgency, to stop breathing with difficulty, to relieve getting choked with inactivity. Energize our government, our environment, our society, and ourselves. Everyone, everywhere, every day. Banega Swasth India. One world hygiene.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
So a $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
Welcome back. Continuing with our focus on the changes proposed in the budget as far as tax structures are concerned. And continuing with the discussion, in fact, let me go across to Mr. Rajiv Dimri now, co-chair of the FICCI Committee on Taxation. Mr. Dimri, there was, we had in fact discussed the pre-budget memo which had been given by FICCI, especially with regard to the tax proposal. So is the FICCI in a way satisfied with what the Finance Minister presented today in terms of the changes she proposed on taxes?
As you would have seen yourself, the list of demands is endless because we have to cater to all the members. And therefore, I can't ever imagine a scenario where all our demands are met, for sure. But I think the focus on MSME the focus on manufacturing and employment generation. Those are some of the key demands that the FICCI has been highlighting, not just in this year, but multiple years. Because, the core aspect of MSME is that not only we need all the big companies, yes, of course, but if you look at the larger economies, if you look at Germany, if you look at US, the medium and small enterprises plays a material role in economic activity, in value addition, in innovation, and of course in local employment. And these MSME also has the ability to have a more widespread development and not just concentrated to some large industrial areas.
Right, but
and
what's your
therefore
point of view as far as the taxation structure is concerned, Mr. Dimri? Because we are focusing specifically on that in this show.
When it comes to taxation, yes, if there could have been little bit more incentives for the larger players, that's something. But if we look at the removal of the equalization levy, which has been a demand for a number of years, and that was a great thing. The rationalization of TDS provisions, because even small small defaults were resulting in major nuisance. So we certainly welcome some of the rationalization measures. But is there anything big for the big manufacturing? For instance, no PLI is a miss as far as we are concerned in this budget. So while PLI has been a materially successful, schemes, not having a PLI in this budget is definitely a miss. So there are good and bad in this budget for the taxpayers.
Right. Saraswati Kasturi Rangan, coming to you now. One of the aspects that we're looking at is, besides the income tax slabs, is the capital gains tax as well. While there was a demand for rationalizing it, and that's what the finance minister has done this time around, there's also been an increase in capital gains tax, both in short term as well as long term. So what is your takeaway as far as that is concerned?
Well, I guess overall it is a matter of deliberating whether consistency and clarity is better over a long-term period. And I think the sense we are getting is that this government is definitely looking at long-term changes. So from that perspective, I would say while there is a small tweak from 10% for listed securities to 12.5%, the exemption limit also has been increased from 1 lakh to 1,25,000. So yes, there is an initial feeling that yes, the rates are higher, but if it is consistent and there for long term, I would definitely say 12.5 is not too bad. From a short-term capital gain perspective, especially on the listed securities, yes, 15 to 20 is not easy to digest, and I think there was a knee-jerk reaction from the markets on that. That is something that we would definitely need to look at. The other thing we would also need to keep in mind is on immovable properties, we are seeing that the rate is now long-term is at 12.5% without indexation. So that's something which we would need to look at. Does it really work? Because indexation was something that was considered very favorable from an immovable property perspective. So we would need to look at that a little more in detail. But I think overall, we would need to look at whether, given all the fine balancing that needs to be done, I think this is something that's commendable.
Right. Naveen Wadhwa, if I can bring you in on this. Now, coming back to the income tax structure, the changes were obviously very pointedly made only to the new income tax regime. But will this finally lead to more takers? Because we haven't really seen that happening much over the past couple of years. So what's your thought on that?
So I still do not believe that many taxpayers will go with the new tax regime. So I did some little calculations, and what I found, if your total income is about 20 lakh rupees and you are claiming just a handful of deductions like ATC, ATD, 24B, and still old tax regime is beneficial for you, your tax liability would be lesser in the old tax regime. And as of now, till date for this current assessment year, around 80% of the taxpayers are still in the old tax regime. So I believe this number should be reduced a bit, and but I still believe that if your income is about 20 lakh rupees, the old tax regime is beneficial for you. And if let's talk about the capital gain taxation, yes, there has been a buzz. The removal of the indexation benefit is very, very disadvantageous for the taxpayers. But if this is not the exact case, if your property is too old, if you bought your property, let's say in 2001, and there has been substantial increase in the price of your property. So your property is in tier 1 city, let's say Gurgaon and Noida. So the tax liability would be lesser if after this removal of the indexation benefit and reduction in the tax rate. So I won't say it's not completely black or white. I still say it's a gray, and you have to see case to case basis if this budget actually has given you something or it has taken something out of your pocket.
Right. In fact, if I can take the same question and with a bit of a twist to Kumaramangalam Vijay. Mr. Vijay, do you also feel that even now there'll be less takers for the new tax regime? Really, this is not going to work out. And do you feel that the government with this is in any which way a step closer to actually phasing out the old tax regime? Do you see that actually happening? Because we also heard voices from the ground there saying that they are not impressed.
Yeah, so I would agree with what Naveen is saying, that for the high tax brackets, the old tax regime still works well. But at the same time, you see, at some stage we'll have moved towards a more digitized compliance process, where probably most of these deductions, which are based on certain expenses being claimed and all that, they'll have to give way. So I think we're moving towards that direction, and it's only a matter of time before the old one will probably be completely phased out. Yeah.
Okay. Now, if do you feel also, if I can take this question to Charanya Lakshmi Kumaran, if we look at some other aspects on how middle class could be affected or the salary class could be affected, and those are in terms of the customs duty cuts. If I can have that graphics up, which will show that there's of course been duty cuts in gold and silver, that's been brought down from 15 to 6%. Telecom equipment also, there's in fact been a hike from 10 to 15%. And cancer drugs, 3 more medicines have been exempted. And in the medical X-ray equipment, customs duty has in fact been reduced. So do you think that these measures today will actually boost these sectors? They are supposed to be people-friendly measures, but how does it translate it in terms of consumption patterns?
Right. So, great question. I think I would like to look at it in 2 ways, right? One is, you said middle class, right? So that is your consumer class. The other is your middle class, which is also your salaried employee, right? So there are 2 aspects of a middle class that one needs to look at when we look at the budget. Now, the middle class with respect to consumer, yes, things like reduction in the rate of BCD for precious metals is going to definitely impact, and I think I'm very, very thrilled about it, personally speaking. Things like mobile phones, BCD on mobile phone, BCPA equipments, chargers, that has come down. If you look at, you said medicines, for example, 3 critical cancer drugs, that's come down. So when it comes, these are things that will be directly beneficial for a consumer. But if I look at customs duties on, say, steel, electronics, critical minerals, marine, shrimp feed, etc., these are all things that are going to give boost to manufacturing, specific sectors to improve and increase the manufacturing, to increase exports. And when we talk about manufacturing, and this has been a recurrent theme, I think from 2017 onwards, that we have to now push towards the next phase of manufacturing. Manufacturing is going to create jobs. Jobs means, again, this is something that's going to go back to the lower middle class and the middle class all over again. So I think this is a great boost to the manufacturing sector.
Okay, yes, and jobs and the internship program, which has also been suggested in the budget, that's also something which has, of course, at least led to a lot of reactions, if nothing else. If I can quickly now ask all of you to come up to present your assessment of the budget, especially with regard to taxes that we have been focusing on, starting with Kumaramangalam Vijay, first with you. I want to actually get an opinion from everyone here on the same question. Modi 3.0 government's first budget, how does it fare when it comes to the burden that the salaried class or the middle class have to take in terms of the tax share? How does this budget fare as far as that scale is concerned? Kumaramangalam Vijay, first with you.
Well, middle classes have been taking the burden of contributing a lot to the revenue, and to that extent, the relief will always be, they'll feel that it's falling short. But I think it's a great step because they've retained at least 12.5% tax on the capital gains on long term. At the same time, on the properties, they've reduced the tax rates, and the angel tax has gone away. I think overall, I think it's a very, very positive budget, and it will lay steps towards a lot
right.
more inclusive growth going forward.
Right. I have 30 seconds for each guest to comment on this. Naveen Wadhwa, you go next.
As far as the income tax proposals are concerned, so I believe the government has tried to bring certainty in the tax laws. They have tried to simplify the provision, and they have given a lot of things for the taxpayer, except if we leave tax on the capital gain from the financial securities. I believe there are a lot of things for the taxpayer, and it will really help them in getting the certainty in the taxation laws. So I'll say the taxpayer has something to cheer up for this budget.
Okay. Rajiv Dimri, your closing thoughts?
What is given to the individual taxpayers is good, not great. Of course, 17.5 is good, but it's not what will make them absolutely delightful. The focus on creating employment for young people is a great step forward. What is also perhaps not talked about, the steps that have been taken to reduce dispute, which is one big problem that our tax system has. I think that will also go a long way in making this a more beneficial for the larger economy.
Right. The finance minister has also, in fact, called for a complete review of the IT Act to try and simplify it for everybody. Saraswati Kasturi Rangan, your final thoughts on this?
So I think we've all been talking about the tax slabs and the capital gains, but I think there's a little more in the detail for the salaried class. For instance, that there was this tax collected at source, which was typically not availed or not given as to be considered in your salary deduction. Now that has been enabled. So I think those with overseas remittances, stock payments, purchase of gold, they would now be able to use all those credits at the time of tax withholding itself. The other thing is for MNCs, employees where they give overseas shares, there was a big challenge reporting all of that in the tax return, and they had to file ITR2. Now there is an exemption from reporting up to 20 lakhs. So I think procedurally there is a lot that is there to cheer for. Overall, I think it's a step in the right direction, bringing clarity and consistency. Certainly a long-term bet, I would say.
And finally, Charanya Lakshmi Kumaran.
Thank you. So yes, I think it's a positive budget. Does it mean immediately a lot of money in the pockets of the middle class? Maybe not. But this is, I don't think we should look at a budget every year anymore as a tax saving per se, but as a roadmap for the next few years. And I think two key things: rationalization of tax rates, simplification of the act, simplification of the procedure, and dispute resolution. I think these are key takeaways which will help the middle class and every taxpayer in the future.
Right, and with that, we are coming to an end to this show where we specifically looked at the budget and the proposals that the finance minister presented as far as taxation structure is concerned, and the several aspects that we covered here. Thank you so much to all my guests for joining me on this discussion. And with that, of course, it's a wrap from my side. News and updates will continue right here on NDTV. I'm also, in order to discuss the budget presentation today, I'm also joined by Dr. Soumya Kanti Ghosh, Chief Economic Advisor of the SBI and also a member of the 16th Finance Commission. Mr. Ghosh, thank you so much for joining us here on NDTV. Your initial assessment of the budget presented by the Finance Minister today.
Yeah, I think, thank you for having me on the show. I think it's a good budget. It's a budget actually which ensures stability and continuity in the tax proposals. There has been some tweaks in the budget, but the good thing is that the numbers which are put out in the budget, as like in the previous years, they are conservative. And my sense is that at the end of the year, you will see that the deficit numbers and the borrowing numbers which have been put out will be much better than this, given the existing tax buoyancy. So basically the budget again, I mean, it has been a case for the last couple of years. The budget actually over delivers and under promises. And I think this is a continuity from the last 2 years when the deficit was pegged at higher level and we reached a lower target. So from that point of view, it is good for the markets it is good for stability and good for continuity.
Mr. Ghosh, how does this budget fare when it comes to assessing on the basis of ease of doing business? Is there enough measure which has been proposed by the Finance Minister to enhance ease of doing business?
I think on the first case, if you ask me about the ease of doing business, I think the government has reduced the taxes on foreign companies from 40 to 35%. So that's a positive step. The second thing which it has done is that it is actually this time announced several schemes which basically talks about this employability. As you know that the government is going to incentivize the people who are going to enter the workforce. So that is also another thing in terms of the employability. And if you ask me about the ease of doing business, I think it has actually identified critical sectors which are employment generators. For example, in MSME sectors, there are several initiatives. The credit guarantee scheme is coming, which will literally benefit a lot of SME players. The agricultural sector, the land records are going to be digitized. And if this is an indication, I think over a point of time, given the fact that a lot of records are digitized, it will also help the farmers to hypothecate their land and get higher loan. And also, I think in some of the other sectors like taxation, like the skilling, the government has intended abolishing the angel tax. So that is also another way of looking into the ease of doing business. So I think there are several micro initiatives in the budget which tries to ease of doing business, but I want to emphasize that this is a continuity, and you could actually see more changes coming in the February budget, because the Finance Minister today said that she wants to simplify the IT tax. And my hunch is that over a point of time, the changes which we have seen in the capital gains and other things will mean that we are actually moving to a new tax regime.
Okay, Mr. Ghosh, quickly, because you mentioned it, that this internship program which has been suggested by the government, there are a lot of questions being raised about it. Politics apart, do you think it's workable? And does it really truly answer, is that a fitting answer to the jobs challenge that we are facing?
See, I think if you ask me very honestly, I think in Indian labor market, if you look into for the record of the last 50 years, every time if you look into the data, 50% or more of the Indian labor market is actually self-employed. So basically the criticism which often comes in the last couple of years that the self-employment has gone up is actually not correct, because always it's a matter of fact that 50% of more India's employees are self-employed. Having said that, the idea about the schemes is that trying to ensure that the labor force is actually getting formalized. And from that point of view, we will also find another mention in the budget, where the budget has clearly said that the data on the eShram portal, whereby all the unorganized laborers have actually registered, that will be integrated with the other portals. So this means that the government is working on two steps. First, formalizing the Indian labor force, because the informal labor component in the Indian market varies from 40 to 45% through several estimates. So that is the first aim of the government, to reduce the informality. And the second thing is that the existing informality also, the government was actually trying to address their issues by trying to see how it can extend social security benefits to them. So my sense is that it's a working process. You may not see immediate results, but over a point of time, I think this could actually address some of the structural issues of the labor market.
Right. Mr. Ghosh, my final question to you. There was a lot of anticipation that there would be something, some announcements made to boost the demand in rural economy. Was that a miss in this budget, according to you?
I don't think it's a miss. I think the government has clearly said that it wants to work on digitizing the land records, and it will actually help the 6 crore farmers. My sense is that in the February budget, we could actually see some definitive moves in that direction in terms of easing of the agricultural credit by using the land records. So I think, and the next budget I think is only a couple of months away in February. So a lot of things which has been said in this budget or not repeated in the budget, I think this is going to happen in the February budget when it will be presented.
Right. My final question, and we have very less time, but your thoughts on whether you see the old tax regime being phased out in the next budget?
Yes, I think the old tax regime has outlived its continuity, but I would like to add one point over here. I think in any country, the personal income tax would ideally convert to the corporate income taxes, or it could be lower than that. So my sense is that given the fact that corporate income tax is currently at 25%, over a point of time, if the old tax regime is continued, I think the new tax regime, the income taxes could ideally convert to the corporate taxes, and that could actually give a huge boost to the consumption, which you always talk about in the context of India, where 60% of the GDP data is actually accounted by consumption. So I think that is one wish which as every taxpayer dreams of, but my sense is that ideally they should converge towards each other over a longer period of time.
All right, Mr. Soumyakanti Ghosh there, thank you so much for joining us on the show with your analysis of the budget presented earlier today. And with that, it's a wrap on the bulletin. Keep watching NDTV for more news and updates.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's best 5G smartphone brand.
लोन मिलेगा या नहीं ये आपके क्रेडिट स्कोर पे डिपेंड करता है। तो आज ही पैसाबाजार.com पर जाइए और अपना क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक कीजिए फ्री में, क्योंकि लोन की जरूरत कभी भी किसी को भी पड़ सकती है।
बस एक्टिंग करा लो इनसे।
पैसाबाजार.com, क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक, आदत अच्छी है।
The biggest democratic exercise in the world. Team NDTV covers it from ground zero.
BJP really had to fight a tough election this time.
Unprecedented exercise.
भारतीय जनता पार्टी ने ये देश के विकास
Unmatched coverage.
There is no dispute. जनता को decide करना है.
From polling to counting, NDTV brought you the most trustworthy news and updates. Elections mean NDTV.
NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number one in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust. Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News